This is an article from mysteriousuniverse.org entitled A Collection of Tales of Phantom Black Dogs, a Worldwide Weird Phenomenon by Nick Redfern. In his excellent book, Explore Phantom Black Dogs, the author and researcher Bob Trubshaw wrote the following, quote, "The folklore of phantom black dogs is known throughout the British Isles. From the black Shuck of East Anglia to the Mauthe Dhoog of the Isle of Man, there are tales of huge spectral hounds, quote, darker than the night sky, end quote, with eyes, quote, glowing red as burning coals, end quote. While a number of intriguing theories exist to explain the presence and nature of such spectral-like beasts, certainly the most ominous of all is that they represent some form of precursor to, or instigator of, doom, tragedy, and death. One of the most infamous of all black dog encounters in the British Isles occurred at St. Mary's Church, Bungay, Suffolk, England, on Sunday, August 4th, 1577, when an immense and veritable spectral hound from hell materialized within the church during a powerful thunderstorm and mercilessly tore into the terrified congregation with its huge fangs and razor-sharp claws. In fact, so powerful was the storm that it reportedly killed 2 men in the belfry as the church tower received an immense lightning bolt that tore through it and shook the building to its ancient foundations. According to an old local verse, quote, all down the church in midst of fire the hellish monster flew, and passing onward to the choir, he many people slew, end quote. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the beast bounded out of St. Mary's and was reported shortly thereafter at Blythburgh Church, about 12 miles away, where it allegedly killed and mauled even more people with its immense and bone-crushing jaws, and where, it is said, the scorch marks of the beast's claws can still be seen to this day, infamously imprinted upon the ancient door of the church. Even more intriguing is the fact that Bungay's legend of a satanic black hound parallels that of yet another local legend, that of Black Shuck, a giant spectral dog that haunts the Norfolk and Suffolk coasts. Such is the popularity of the Bungay legend that it has resulted in an image of the beast being incorporated into the town's coat of arms, and the Black Dogs is the name of the Bungay Town Football Club. The stark, disturbing, and memorable image that the infamous devil dog, or the phantom hound, as described above, undoubtedly conjures up is that of a definitively sinister beast that stealthily prowls the towns and villages of ancient England by nothing more than silvery moonlight or to the accompanying background of a violent, crashing thunderstorm. It is, however, a little-known fact outside of dedicated students of the phenomenon that sightings of such creatures have also taken place in modern times, in both the 20th and 21st centuries, even, as is evidenced by the following reports from my files. First, there is the story of the Bradley family of the city of Leeds who had the very deep misfortune to encounter one of the now familiar hounds of hell in early 2009, at no less a site than the English city of Lichfield's famous and historic cathedral, which has the distinction of being the only English cathedral to be adorned with 3 spires. According to the Bradleys, while walking around the outside of the cathedral one pleasant Sunday morning, they were startled by the sight of a large black dog racing along at high speed, and adjacent to the side of the cathedral. The jaw-dropping fact that the dog was practically the size of a donkey ensured their attention was caught and held, but that attention was rapidly replaced by overwhelming fear when the dog allegedly, quote, charged the wall, end quote, of the cathedral and summarily vanished right into the brickwork as it did so. Perhaps understandably, the Bradleys chose not to report their mysterious encounter to cathedral officials or to the police. And then we have the account of Marjorie Sanders. Although Sanders' account can be considered a new one in the sense that it only reached my eyes and ears in August 2009, during which time I was on a week-long return trip to England, it actually occurred back in the closing stages of the Second World War, when the witness was a girl of 10 or 11. At the time, Sanders was living in a small village not too far from England's Tamworth Castle, which overlooks the River Tame, and which has stood there since it was built by the Normans in the 11th century. Although an earlier Anglo-Saxon castle is known to have existed on the same site, and which was constructed by the forces of Ethelfreda, the Mercian queen and the eldest daughter of King Alfred the Great of Wessex. According to Sanders, quote, probably in about early 1945, end quote, her grandfather had, quote, seen a hellhound parading around the outside of the castle that scared him half to death when it vanished in front of him, end quote. For reasons that Sanders cannot now remember or comprehend, her grandfather always thereafter memorably referred to the animal in question as, quote, the furnace dog, End quote. Whether or not this is an indication that the spectral dog had the seemingly ubiquitous fiery red eyes that so many witnesses have reported remains unfortunately unknown, but it would not at all surprise me if that was one day shown to be the case. Then we have the brief but highly thought-provoking account of Gerald Clark, a Glasgow baker, whose father claimed to have briefly seen a large black-colored phantom hound with bright electric blue-colored eyes on the grounds of a military base in central England called Royal Air Force Stafford in the late 1950s, and while on patrol late one winter's evening. As was the case with so many other witnesses to such disturbing entities, the elder Clark quietly confided in his son that the creature, quote, just vanished. First it was there and then it wasn't, end quote. In view of all of the above, one can only say, quote, beware of the dog, end quote. Now, let's turn to the phantom black dog in the world of exciting fiction. Few people who have read Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic Sherlock Holmes novel, The Hound of the Baskervilles, can forget those immortal words uttered by Dr. James Mortimer to the world's most famous fictional detective. Quote, Mr. Holmes, they were the footprints of a gigantic hound, end quote. It may come as a surprise to some people to learn that Conan Doyle's novel was actually based upon real legends of giant, devilish hounds that were said to haunt Britain's villages and countryside, bringing doom, tragedy, and death in their spectral and demonic wake. Yes, Britain has a long, rich, and varied history of encounters with what have generally become known as quote-unquote phantom black dogs. Usually much larger than normal dogs, they are said to possess a pair of large glowing eyes, very often red. They frequent graveyards, old roadways, crossroads, and bridges, and are almost unanimously associated with the realm of the dead. In some cases, the beasts appear to be demonstrably evil, while in other reports evidence is exhibited of a helpful, perhaps even concerned, nature. But whatever these critters are, they are not your average flesh and blood animal, not at all. They might just be your worst nightmare. Now, let's make a trip to Latin America. While the image of the phantom black dog is most associated with the British Isles and mainland Europe, the beast has been seen in many other locations too, including throughout Latin America. The leading researcher in this field is Simon Burkle, the author of Phantom Black Dogs in Latin America. Running at 38 pages, Burkle's work is obviously very much a booklet rather than a full-length book. But that doesn't detract from the most important thing of all. Its pages are packed with case after case, each offering the reader little-known and seldom-seen information on the definitive Latin American cousin to Britain's more famous counterpart. Notably, Burkle's publication details the truly startling wealth of similarities between those creatures seen centuries ago in England and those reported throughout Latin America in the last 100 years. Namely, the diabolical glowing eyes, the association that the phantom hound has with life after death, how seeing the beast may be a precursor to doom and tragedy, its occasional helpful and guiding qualities, the fact that the animal is usually witnessed in the vicinity of bridges, crossroads, and cemeteries, its ability to shapeshift and change in size, and not forgetting the most important thing, of course, its perceived paranormal origins. Burkle also reveals how the legends of the phantom black dog of some Latin American nations, such as Guatemala, have been exploited by those with draconian and outdated morals. For example, there are widespread tales of people that enjoy having a drink or several incurring the dire wrath of the phantom black dog, which, as Burkle says, quote, was certainly popularized by the Catholic Church, which used this legend and others as moralizing tales, end quote. Winged hounds, whose appearance and activities smack strongly of the modern-day chupacabras of Puerto Rico, are discussed, as are copious amounts of data that make a link with tales of a truly dark and satanic nature. Burkle also reveals intriguing data suggesting that at least some tales of the black dog might be based upon cultural memories and stories of very real, large, and ferocious hounds brought to the New World by the conquistadors centuries ago. Quote, savage and ferocious dogs to kill and tear apart the Indians, end quote. That said, however, it is clear that the overwhelming majority of reports of the phantom black dog in Latin America parallel those of Britain to a truly striking, eerie, and extraordinary degree, in the sense that they appear to be something other than flesh and blood entities. As Burkle states, quote, although the black dog may appear at first glance to be a British or North European phenomenon, it exists in essentially the same form across the entire length and breadth of the Americas. Much has been written upon the presumed Germanic, Celtic, or Indo-European origin of the legend, but such an origin would not explain how a Highland Maya girl can meet a shape-shifting black dog at a Guatemalan crossroads. It appears that the black dog, much like the poltergeist, is a global phenomenon. End quote. In very much the same way that the United Kingdom is home to the eerie phantom black dog and the United States has the morphing and mysterious coyote, so the continent of Africa has its very own equivalent. It is known as the were hyena, a creature that some believe is a human who becomes a hyena, while others teach that it is a hyena which has the ability to take on human form. Before we get to the matter of this supernatural hyena, let us first take a look at its regular normal equivalent. Widespread across East Africa and South Africa, the hyena is a formidable and highly dangerous animal, one which will not think twice about attacking, killing, and even eating people if it comes down to it. Muscular and athletic, the hyena can reach a height of around 3 feet and can live for up to 25 years. Now, we'll examine the far stranger side of the hyena, the one which is dominated by shape-shifting. As far as the morphing beast of Africa is concerned, it is East Africa and North Africa where the creature is predominantly said to dwell. One of the most visible of the various bodies of African were hyenas is that which is known as the Boltungan. It lurks and voraciously hunts in the vicinity of Lake Chad, which borders upon northern Nigeria. In 1883, Gerald Massey wrote of this particular controversy in The Natural Genesis, A Short Life. Quote, in the Kanuri legend of Bornu, Africa, the name of the hyena is Boltu, and from this is formed the verb Boltungan, which signifies, I transform myself into a hyena. There is a town named Kaboltanoa, the inhabitants of which are said to possess this faculty of transformation. End quote. Massey was of the opinion that this belief could be explained away in wholly down-to-earth fashion, and as a result of, quote, the donning of the hyena skin in their religious masquerade, end quote. But is that all there is to it? Rites and rituals? Not according to the locals, it's not. Far from it. Throughout Morocco, the Lake Chad area, and Tanzania, there is an intriguing belief that each and every blacksmith has the ability to take on the form of a hyena, chiefly as a result of the same blacksmiths also being experts in the fields of magic and sorcery. Whereas the werewolf traditionally surfaces when the moon is full, the blacksmith turned were hyena is limited to activity during daylight hours. Interestingly, in Tanzania, there is a long-standing belief that witches travel on the backs of supernatural spotted hyenas late at night, and in much the same fashion that the traditional European witch takes to the skies on the traditional broomstick.